Have you been enjoying our Impact podcast and our great guests? Then please give us a thumbs up and leave a 5-star review on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you consume your favorite podcasts. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com. This episode of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Closed Loop Partners. Closed Loop Partners is a leading circular economy investor in the United States with an extensive network of Fortune 500 corporate investors, family offices, institutional investors, industry experts, and impact partners. Closed Loop's platform spans the arc of capital from venture capital to private equity, bridging gaps and fostering synergies to scale the circular economy. To find Closed Loop Partners, please go to www.closedlooppartners.com. Welcome to another edition of the Impact Podcast. I'm John Shigarian, and we're so delighted to have with us today Mark Siegel. He's the founder and CEO of ESG Today. Welcome to the Impact Podcast, Mark.
Thanks, John. It's great to be here. Really exciting. Thanks.
You know, Mark, before we get going into your wonderful online, newsletter, publication, however you want to term it, I just want to say, first of all, one of the real reasons I was so excited to have you on the show today was I'm a huge fan. You're doing great and important work at a very, very critical juncture in the world's history in terms of climate change, in terms of circular economy, the shift from the linear to circular economy. And I just think what you're publishing on a regular basis is super important and critical to help educate the world to the importance of this shift, the shifts that we're undergoing right now.
Oh, thanks. Thanks so much. I mean, it's great to hear. Honestly, it's gratifying to hear that, this crazy idea that I had actually draws attention and draws, readers, and people actually get something out of it. So it's wonderful to hear. Thank you.
Our team gets a lot out of it. All of us subscribe to it, and we'll go more into it in a little while. But before we get talking about ESG Today, I'd love to hear about Mark Siegel. Mark, where did you grow up? You have a fascinating background. Where did you grow up? Where did you get educated? And how did you even get to this position?
Okay, so I grew up and spent most of my life in Canada. I grew up in Toronto. Went to school there. Went to York University. Did the School of Business. Did my undergrad there. And then from there, I went into the investment world. I worked for a few years for investment banks and sell-side research. Then I spent a few years in the States. I went to New York. I did my MBA at Columbia University, Columbia Business School. And then I returned again back to the investment world. Spent a little more time on sell-side research, covering technology, software. But then the bulk of my career actually was spent in investment management. For the 15 years before I started ESG Today, I worked for a fund manager in Toronto called Delaney Capital. But $2 billion fund. I was their head of U.S. equities, at least for the last few years that I was there. And about 8 years ago now, I moved to Israel, where I live now, in a town called Modi'in. I continued actually working in Canada for the first 6 years that I was here. I was actually commuting back and forth overseas every month, and it was tough, but I got a lot of pretty good frequent flyer points and lots of airline status. So there's an upside,
right? Sure.
And then about 3 years ago, I started ESG Today. So,
what was the aha moment when you're historically a banker? Where did you think that why did you think there was a white space in the market for regular publication on the topic of ESG? Where was your, how did you connect the dots, and where was your aha moment?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'd like to say it was some flash of inspiration where I saw the next big thing, but it was all the opposite. It was I essentially filled a need that I felt myself. Um, like I said, in the years before I started it, I was working as an investor, right? And I was not an ESG investor. I was a generalist investor, focusing on everything U.S. equities, like every sector, energy as much as technology, as much as consumer, everything. And ESG was not a focus at all. And honestly, I couldn't have spelled it for you if you'd asked maybe 10 years ago. But at the same time, responsible investing was always something that we were generally interested in, but more from the sense of risk management, more from the sense of, it's always good to know who's running your companies, make sure they're not doing sketchy things. But it was very, very vague and just more of almost a notion or a feeling than anything really codified or specific. About, I don't know, I would say 5 or 6 years ago, like, pretty late into my tenure, at the firm, we started hearing more about ESG. And again, I would love to say that we were sort of on top of it first. And we went to our clients and said, oh, you know what the next big thing is? But it was really opposite. We really found that our clients were coming to us, and saying, oh, my friend said, told me something about this ESG investing. Can you tell me more about it? Can you tell me how my portfolios are aligned with it? All those kinds of questions. And what was interesting is we found that very often they didn't even know what they were asking. They just knew that it was something new and important. And, honestly, I think the ideas like, environmental sustainability, human rights, I think those resonate pretty well, right? They're not, at least at a high level, they're not hard to explain why they can be important. And then it really started as a trickle. We manage money for some charitable foundations and, institutions like that, as well as private wealth. And it really started, sort of like on the foundation side, where I guess, they would be much more interested in the responsible investing side. But it really quickly, really rapidly spread to frequent questions all the time. And, it kind of sent us it sent our heads swimming a little bit. Like, we really had to go back and look at our portfolios in an entirely new light. As an investor, what you usually do when you have like a new topic, or new area of investment, is you go and read, right? I spent 95% of my time in the investment world reading, researching. So that's what we did here. We figured, okay, let's go hit the books and find out what this ESG stuff's all about. And as opposed to anything else that we'd ever researched before, at least for myself, it was much more difficult, much tougher. Everything, whereas we were used to looking at, annual reports and like digging up numbers or looking at industry research, there was nothing or nothing substantive, right? I mean, some companies, especially the bigger ones, have sort of started getting wind of the fact that they have to talk about this stuff. So they put out, the equivalent of what you'd see in the 1980s of the glossy, annual financial reports. They would do the equivalent of that on sustainability, basically say anything they wanted, basically highlight only the things that are great. Oh, look what we did. Look at the charities that we're funding, which is all well and good. But the ability to compare companies or industries, it was almost impossible. And I went from, spending, 5% of my time on sustainability ESG to like 50. It was really totally time consuming. It was completely time consuming. And on the one hand, it was a little frustrating because I didn't get to do the stuff I was normally doing, financial analysis, nothing. But on the other hand, I actually found it really interesting, right? And so when I left, I figured, it would be interesting to sort of go back and see, instead of going back to another management firm in Israel or doing something, investment management firm, maybe, take a look at my old life and, pick a pain point and see if I can solve it, right? Which is what I did. So I thought, okay, it's got to be something ESG. So what can I do in ESG? And I thought, what, if I sort of picture myself coming into my office every morning. And what I would normally do was I'd say, okay, I'm a generalist, so I have to know everything that's going on in, these 10 things. I have to know what's going on in, the energy world, and if there's been any important regulatory announcements, whatever. And I thought it'd be kind of cool to be, if there was something like that for ESG, if there was somewhere I could go for 15 minutes a day, sort of see what the key topics were that were important over the last, over the last few days. See, where what other investors are doing, or where capital's flowing, or what sort of disclosure requirements companies are going to have, anything. But there's this sort of a guide to say what's important in the ESG sustainability world right now as an investor. And what do I need to know? What companies are on top of what companies aren't, all that, to sort of have a quick, easily digestible news source. And like I said, I started it as an investor focus because that was the voice that I spoke in. But as soon as I did that, I found once it started getting popular, it really went way beyond investors, and companies were really interested. Companies who were actually having to report on the stuff were very interested themselves in, because they were getting approached by investors who were suddenly demanding new things from them. So they wanted to know what their investors were going to be asking them, what banks were going to be asking them. They were getting more questions from their other stakeholders, so from all those guys, and they wanted to know what their peers were doing. So I kind of shifted gears a little bit to kind of speaking about both sides. What investors want, what companies are looking at. So it's a really kind of broad focus right now, which is a bit tough, and I might have to hire a little more staff to cover everything. But I guess in a long form answer, that's where I am right now.
I'm real lucky to have this show, because I started this show 15 or 16 years ago, 2007, just to have folks like you on. But what always amazes me is once I got turned on to your great, publication, and again, for our listeners and viewers who want to find Mark's great publication called ESG Today, it's very simple. Just go to www.esgtoday.com. Download it, subscribe it, read it. You'll love it. Mark, I was in shock once I read the first couple of editions that no one's done it. It was so comprehensive, first of all, what you were doing. But then I said, what a brilliant guy this is. I've got to have him on the show, because where's this thing been? How is there not 10 of these or 5 of these or 3 of these? I mean, that I've seen in the form that you did it, which was just it's so well done. So you launched this in 2020, Mark, which is really the beginning of the pandemic. Talk about being an entrepreneur. Now you leave a banking job, I take it. I think you thought about this for some time, and 5-6 years ago, and you said you came up with the idea, and you started planning on it. Did you fully cut ties with the banking world when you launched this in 2020?
It was really, this is full time, right? This is
right.
This is more than full time. This is roughly 20% full time. So, it's a funny thing in the sense that I still feel like I'm a professional investor, even though I haven't done it in years. But in an interesting way, when I started this, my experience in the investment world, at least the part that I was in, is that it's very insular. You build advantage by knowing things that other people don't know, or figuring things out that other people don't know. So your discussions with peers, outside of your own office, your discussion with peers in the industry are kind of limited. And it's always interesting to meet people who are doing what you're doing, but it's not that collaborative. I knew other people that I would see at conferences and stuff, and, be on a sort of, hey, how you doing basis. But I found that after I started doing this, being a provider of information instead of a holder of information, I find that, I'm much more involved in the investment world than I ever was before, which is sort of interesting.
It's ironic, actually. It's ironic, right?
It's exactly when I was in the middle of it, I didn't know anybody. And now
you're the man that every banker wants to know.
Yeah.
So when you launched it, you launched it before the pandemic hit, I take it?
Right before, just before, which I got to say was a very good time to start a home-based business. Yeah.
Right. You picked a great time. You didn't have an office or anything. Working out of your home was a brilliant idea, I guess. So, how's it been? Talk about the journey. Talk about what you share with what you expected that happened, but share what you also was unexpected that's happened during this the last 2 years of being an entrepreneur now instead of a banker.
That's a fantastic question. I didn't expect it to take off the way that it did. I was hoping that it would, but I know I've met enough entrepreneurs that I know, okay, every 1 out of 5, 10, 3, I don't know, really works. But I figured out, look, I'll give it a shot for a few months. I'll see if anyone noticed, right? So I published for a few months. I'm like, oh, I actually got some traffic. It's kind of interesting. I got my first advertising client, shockingly, in like but 3 months after I started publishing, which surprised me. I thought, I was trying to think of a marketing plan that, to go door to door. And then someone actually showed up and said, oh, hey, I've seen your site. You mind if I advertise on it? That was shocking, right?
There's your marketing plan. There's your marketing plan.
Yeah.
Build a great publication. Have a lot of people thinking about it and reading it, and people want to advertise on it.
So that was both gratifying and relieving, because it sort of gave me the sense for the first time that, okay, this is actually something I can do professionally, and actually build something out of it. Which is both financially sustainable, which is nice, but more than that, the idea of actually just building something, which I never really had the chance to do before.
Yeah.
It's gratifying and rewarding and time consuming like crazy, but it's the first time in my life that I'm as busy as anything, but actually happy about it. And the more I put into it, the more I get out of it, which is great.
Okay, so I used to be in the .com world, but this was back when I started the .com year Google was founded, 1998. I started financialaid.com. So I'll just go back to some of my old lingo. So talk about scaling. How fast is it scaled, and what's your where were your viewers the first quarter? Where are your viewers now? And where's this rocket ship going, Mark?
Right. I think I'm still, I hope I am still in the scaling phase. The thing is, you never know until you're actually there. I remember, okay, let me think. So when my first advertising customer came along, I remember I actually pushed back a little bit. And I said, guys, are you sure you don't want to wait? There's not a whole lot of traffic, right? But they said, no, we like what you're doing. Happy to support it, which is fantastic. It was Refinitiv, interestingly. I used to be a client of theirs, which they didn't know when they came to me. They've been bought by the London Stock Exchange Group since then. But we're still in touch. They're a fantastic client. But anyways, so when they came along, I think I told them that I'd managed to get like 20,000 hits on the site by that point. It was pretty early on. Which was really exciting for me. So I've had to 20,000 people actually clicked on it. Amazing.
Right.
Now, on a good day, I get that. So that's really nice.
That's great.
Yeah. So it scaled really nicely. We're, I'm not quite there every day, but we're probably 300,000 page views a month, which is, and growing really quickly. I started a newsletter after a little. I didn't do it right away, but I started it a little while after because I thought that might be an interesting thing to do, and that became very popular. That kind of moved up to about 25,000 subscribers pretty quickly. 145,000 LinkedIn subscribers, which is great. It's just really gratifying to actually see people interested and engaged in this stuff.
Give our listeners and viewers a little glimpse of where this whole trend of ESG and circular economy is going, Mark. What's getting the most traffic on your site and on your great publication? What are your viewers most interested in? What topics are your viewers and readers most interested in right now?
Yeah. Okay. So I think far above anything else, companies, investors, both of them are really interested in what their obligations are going to be in the next few years. Particularly, relating to where regulators are going. Anytime I write anything with the word disclosure or climate reporting in the headline, it's immensely popular. I mean, almost to the point where I stick it where it doesn't belong. No, just kidding. But that is by far top of mind for companies and investors. I mean, every regulator in every major market is either, coming up with the rules that companies are going to have to provide reporting on climate risk, on their climate plan, especially on climate right now, on climate plans, some on broader sustainability risks that go beyond climate, biodiversity, human rights, everything, governance, everything else. But certainly in those topics, the SEC is in the middle of doing it. The EU just adopted their, that's one of my top performing articles of all time when the EU adopted their CSRD, sustainability reporting rules. Anything like that is very, very top of mind and drives more traffic and more interest and more feedback than anything. Related to that, and not surprisingly, is our articles that have to do with tools to meet those obligations, right? I kind of see them as kind of separate topics, but they're obviously clearly related. I mean, I did an article a while ago, and I think it was about a report that E&Y had put out. And I apologize to whoever it was who put it out if it wasn't them. I'm quite certain it was them. They'd spoken to a bunch of CFOs in companies and asked them, where are you on getting ready for sustainability reporting? Because this stuff is like really serious, really detailed, and very data intensive. And they said that over half of them were storing all their information on spreadsheets, which I found to just be a shocking statistic. And these things take a lot more than spreadsheets, right? I mean, there's going to have to be massive investment in tools and data tools, everything from AI to information management to reporting, to reporting software, to tools that actually go and actually record, what type of emissions companies have, and supply chain tools to find out what's going on in your, what your suppliers are doing. This is immense stuff, and I think the investment has just started, and companies and investors are really aware of that. They know they have big obligations coming up. I believe the SEC put out a study a few months ago saying, estimating what companies are going to have to spend on average to actually meet it. And it was a lot. It was a pretty, I wish I could remember off the top of my head what it was, but these are all big things coming. And it's not just a matter of investing in tools, it's a matter of investing in people, right? I mean, just like you have a CFO's office, now you have a chief sustainability officer office, right? But but they're going to have to sort of meet. There's going to have to be somewhere in the middle, because CSOs, sustainability officers, aren't typically reporters. They don't have the financial reporting discipline that accountants and CFOs do. So there's going to have to be massive investment in people and tools and everything. So that is extremely popular as well. Other things that I think are really popular. I write a lot about, just general sustainability commitments or achievements that companies are doing. Because it just kind of feels good. I'd say those generate different amounts of interest. I find if there are things that other companies are thinking about doing, it really resonates. Every once in a while, something just really hits. A topic recently that I've just started writing about in the last couple of months that has gained more popularity in terms of readership than more rapidly than anything I'd seen before is the anti-ESG political movement in the which I think is, as far as I can tell, pretty much contained in red states in the U.S. But it's getting, whether it's serious or not, it's making a lot of noise and gathering a lot of interest, and people are just getting really riled up, on both sides of it. On the one hand, obviously I have a passion for ESG, so anything that fights against it, kind of rubs me the wrong way. On the other hand, from a pure business perspective, it's really working out nicely for me because it's a big traffic generator. But that is definitely topic of the day.
Well, also you're reporting the news. The news is the news. It's not that, right? Even though you, of course, are pro ESG, it sounds like, obviously, that a little bit of conflict never really hurt any news organization.
Right. And I do my best to be as objective as possible, just report the facts. And this is certainly, pertinent and material to the movement in general.
For our listeners and viewers who've just joined us, we've got Mark Siegel with us today. He's the founder and CEO of ESG Today. To find Mark and his colleagues and his great publication, and to download it, read it, and subscribe to it, go to www.esgtoday.com. Mark, talk a little bit about your readership. It's kind of fun as an entrepreneur when you have a great publication like you have to open up the world map and see where your readers truly are. When you open up the world map, what does it look like? Where are you getting the most interest so far? And I know this will probably be evolving as I interview you a year from now or 2 years from now. But today, where are the majority of your legions of fans?
You're right. It's fascinating to like open the map and see like, oh wow, like there's people all over the world reading the stuff that I'm writing, which is shocking and fun, right?
Cool.
I would say it's the audience is broadly reflective of the English speaking business and investment world. Not shocking. I'd say a little over, maybe 35-40% North America. U.S. obviously the biggest. UK and Europe probably about another third. There's lots in Asia Pacific. A little bit in South America. Just all over. Little Africa. It's just fascinating. It's pretty cool. Demographics. From what I can see, just I guess some a little bit of information on from our newsletter subscribers. It's a very high level business audience. I think I think the management suites are particularly interested in this. Like, I mean, they're the ones who really have boards that they answer to, and they're the ones who talk with investors and with regulators. I think around 15% of our subscribers are C-suites, so CEOs, CFOs, chief sustainability officers, which is, once I actually collected that data for the first time, that was kind of eye-opening. I thought that was interesting. Another 30%, so almost 50% altogether. Another 30% is, senior vice president, director. So it's very, very high level. A pretty big proportion say that their function right now. This actually really shocked me. Around a third said that their main. I'm trying to think what the word is. Their main function right now is sustainability. So that's interesting. It's both a high level audience and the same audience says that they're heavily involved in sustainability. I thought that was really interesting. Wow. Not something I think you'd see 5 years ago.
Right. That's interesting. That is interesting. What when you think about, as you said earlier, right now what's hot is obviously the two sides of the coin of ESG, the little conflicts that are existing right now, like in Texas and other states, as you point out, mostly red states. But talk about, and then like the disclosure issues, SEC, what's Gary Gensler doing and the SEC doing now? What's more on, what do you think is, when you crystal ball the next 5 years, where do you think the hockey puck's going? Not where the puck is today, but now you have 2 years under your belt of running your great publication and lots of information from a lot of really smart folks that you get to talk to and interact with now on a regular basis. Where do you think this what seems like a macro trend is going?
Wow. Okay. So, 5 years sounds a little scary.
Three. Let's go three.
Okay. So, number one, I think we're really just in the, something that I found really interesting. I'll just backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
I found it really interesting just to look, every once in a while I go and look back at the stuff that I was writing about 2 years ago and what I'm writing about now. And more than anything, I get a sense that the ESG field has matured a lot since then, right? I mean, I find that the stories I was writing back then, if a company made some sort of commitment or something, it was a lot more vague, a little less ambitious. It just sounded better than it actually was. And I can see why. I could see, like, as an investor back then, when when a company said, oh, we're going to be carbon neutral or something, I'd say, oh, that's really interesting. Great. But, as more companies have done it, and it becomes more apparent that's actually, that ESG risks and opportunities are actual real investment risks and opportunities. I find investors and regulators have really got on top of it, and companies have become much more serious. And you see, goals and actual actions that are much more material. And I think that's just the beginning. And I think that but I wouldn't call it mature yet, but I think it matures much more. I think materiality comes into play in a big way, where companies actually focus on the things that matters to them, to investors, to their actual sustainability efforts. And I think that becomes much more apparent when companies actually have to start reporting according to real standards that they're going to have to start doing this year, next year, or the year after that, right? So I think things grow up in a big way and things get very serious. Now, what I find really interesting is going to happen, and I think this is also a function of other things that have just happened in the world in general, is I think now that companies invest in data and information, actually, let's say, supply chains have been a big topic over the last couple of years, as you know, not specifically from a sustainability point of view, a little bit, but much more because the world was sort of a mess for so long that, people really had to invest in understanding what's happening in their supply chains. And at the same time, they're investing in seeing what's happening in ESG. And I think those things start to come together, right? I think, the way that you actually, approach a problem was when you can actually see it and report on it, right? And I think a lot of sustainability risk beyond climate happens in company supply chains, right? Let's say human rights risk. If you're a consumer company and you sell clothes or you sell anything, your supply chain until now has been pretty dark. And now I think the data comes up there, and I think once the data is there, everyone knows about it, right? Regulators know about it, investors know about it. They want to know that there's no human rights problems. They want to know there's no anything, like slavery, child labor, all of that. So I think, with the maturing of ESG and the availability of data, I think things just explode from here, because I think all of a sudden you have all this visibility, all this transparency into things that were totally dark before, and a world that's much more interesting. So, I think the next 3 years, and I'll even say the next 5 years, I got over my phobia there. Yeah. I think things changed dramatically, and ESG risk becomes much more important to investment consideration.
Obviously, ESG is a broad topic, which is great because it gives you lots of subtopics to consider and write about, and your readers and subscribers will be very interested in. Let's take out one of the subtopics: circular economy, the shift from the linear to circular economy. What's the interest level that you see today in your subscriber base right now on that massive generational shift that we're undergoing as we speak?
Much higher than it was before. At the beginning, I think people just thought of circular economy, and they had a picture in their head of a recycling bin and, in their office, and you throw in the plastic. I think, again, and I think it's just a matter of things maturing. I mean, honestly, I think people hadn't really heard of circular economy, at least in my circles, no pun intended, until maybe a couple of years ago. And then I started writing about, some investors who focus on these guys like Closed Loop, all those guys. And I find, when I write about them now, it's got a lot more interest than it used to. And it's not just that I'm bigger. It's just relative to everything else. And I think because that it feeds into so many ESG topics. I mean, it really sits at the center of everything. I mean, if you think about it, you could draw a line from circular economy topics to climate, to biodiversity, even to human rights and supply chain. Because I mean, if you're less reliant on on going outside for things, then you can sort of reuse what you have. It just touches everything. So I would say interest is growing, and it's cool to see, because it means that people are actually learning, and the world's just much more interesting, which makes my job tougher, because it's to be the expert and stay a step ahead. I gotta do more reading, more studying.
Right. As an entrepreneur, Mark, when you go to bed at night, what's your top 3 goals for 2023 in terms of continuing to polish and grow and scale ESG today?
That's a great and scary question. I feel that, like I said, I'm kind of in the middle, I hope, of scaling, right? I mean, I think I've maybe a few months ago, I sort of reached the point where, okay, this is a real business, right? It's sustainable. I can keep it going, and I felt like I've kind of hit the point where I can officially say that I have a media platform. Okay, maybe not a huge one, but something to actually, put things on top, right? To build on top of. So then you kind of wonder, what do you do from there? Like, what can you build on top of this platform? And I'm kind of exploring that right now. I mean, little things that just, little things I can add to the site that I don't have, that aren't there now. a lot of our advertising clients like have events that they do that they want to advertise, or a lot of like materials that they want to, so things that I can do to host or drive people towards their events and towards the materials. Maybe one day I can do my own events. I think ESG Today presents
conference.
Something would
conference ESG with all the best ESG experts in the world.
Right, and for the first time, like I'm starting to get a lot of questions saying, "Oh, hey, would you consider a conference?" Honestly, it scares the pants off of me because I've worked on conferences before and I know what's involved. But look, I built a little bit of staff. I think it's doable. But I think I think I kind of lucked into a topic that's really just in its infancy, and I love the prospect of growing my business with it. As it matures, we mature, we can do like so much more, right? It's such a growing topic. The individual verticals are becoming more important. I mean, I think there's lots to do.
Speaking of growing a business, and I agree with you, lots to do, and I think you're going to explode in the coming years, just like the topic is going to continue to explode, and the importance of it. How many employees do you have now working for you?
Okay, it's a little embarrassingly small.
That's not actually, it's impressive. The smaller it is, the better. The more everyone thinks you're even a better genius and a better entrepreneur than it seems like, I think.
There's me, obviously. I do a good chunk of the writing. Honestly, I'd like to maybe build my writing staff a little more so I can do a little more biz dev and a little more management. But I actually do enjoy the writing. So part of that's just an excuse. I mean, I actually enjoy it. I have one dedicated writer aside from myself. My wife, who was a CPA, decided that she didn't like that I was up till 3 o'clock in the morning every day anymore. So she said, "Okay, I'm taking over the back office stuff." So she's on the payroll now.
Oh, good. So it's a family. I love it. So
I've decided to. Sorry, yeah.
When you were a banker, did you know you were this good of a writer and this prolific? Was that one of your best skills then, or?
Look, I got to warn you, I sort of hit my maximum flattery level. So that's it.
Good. Okay, good.
I did have to write a fair bit, and I've always enjoyed writing.
Okay.
I was writing mostly myself, so I didn't know if it was any good or not. But I've come to realize more over the last couple of years, what a skill it is, and I didn't realize that. It's nice to see that I can actually do it in a way that's meaningful to people. I don't think I'm the best writer, but I think I'm good enough, especially with the type of stuff I do. It's very business oriented, so punchy and fast, and not like flowery or elaborate. So I'm pretty good at that. And let's see. So other than that, I've just hired sort of a media specialist to work on those things that I was talking about. Like what can I put on top of the platform? I have one. I have like a web developer, like on a contract basis, and that's it. That's us.
So let's going back. I just want to ask a question. When you were a banker, you never invested in a publishing company before, right? So publishing was very new to you as a.
I knew absolutely nothing about media, and
let's hold that thought, and then also talk about the internet. You weren't a .com specialist. You didn't have a lot of .com investments where the CEOs informed you about being a .com entrepreneur either, right?
No, I was a value investor, so that was the furthest.
Right. So isn't that interesting? People ask me all the time about this, so I just want to ask your thoughts on this. Being now an entrepreneur and a successful one, obviously ESG today is already success. It's already taking in advertising dollars. So it's a business. You got a business on your hands. That's a success. Is there something to not having experience in your given choice of entrepreneurship opportunity than already having some experience and going in with predisposed notions?
Wow, what a fascinating idea. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I didn't even think about the fact that I didn't know anything about it. I mean, it didn't even occur to me until I think sometimes the less you know, right? The less scary something is, right?
Yeah.
And after 6 months, I was like, oh, wow, it would have been really smart if I had done that. And then I sort of fixed this problem. And then again, and I'm still doing that, right? I mean, I still, I talk to marketing people all the time now, and I still don't speak the language at all. So I have to go to friends of mine to translate. But yeah, I think I'm not sure if I would have done it if I had known.
Right.
If I had sort of look, I'm a bit of I'm a bit skeptical in by nature, which I think kind of made me a good and very cautious investor. And kind of insufferable, to my family, because I'm always thinking, what if, right? I mean, my anxiety levels usually here, and going into something where I didn't know what could go wrong, I think that was really helpful.
That's awesome. We have a lot of young entrepreneurs around the world, wannabe entrepreneurs around the world that listen to our podcast. What pearls of wisdom do you have for them now, in terms of starting their own business and being disruptive and going to something that could really make a difference as well as make a profit?
Well, first, absolutely find something that's interesting to you, right? I mean, if like I said, the reason that I started doing ESG today is because it solved a pain point, and I thought it was I saw that there weren't so many people doing it, and all that. But more than anything, I spent so much time on it in my last job, and I found it more interesting than all the other stuff I'd been doing. So it was something that I really felt that, okay, if I'm going to be pouring, I don't want to say how many hours a week because it's a little bit embarrassing, but if I'm going to be dedicating all my time and sleep over something, it better be something that I'm interested in.
Right.
So, meeting that confluence point of something that's interesting and something no one else is doing and something that has value to people, I think was very important. And look, I mean, I thought about being an entrepreneur for a long time. I worked for somebody for the first, 20 years of my career. I thought it'd be interesting, but when I finally got that spark that I said, oh, here's something that I can do, that I like, that I think can be valuable to somebody else. That's when I really decided to dive into it. So that would be my number one. Make sure, obviously make sure that it's interesting to other people or something that people are interested in, but make sure it's interesting to you because, I was going to say that, I don't know how much awareness I brought to the market. I'm not going to oversell, what I've done, but it's also really gratifying to do something where I feel that I'm actually making some bit of difference in the world to make the world better, which is great. In my old job, I felt that a little bit. We were helping people invest and save for retirement, but there was something in the back of my head that always kind of said, are you really doing something valuable? Is the world a better place because of you? And I could say yes, but I had to convince myself a little bit. And now, it's nice to really feel good about the things that you're doing. So I think that's very useful.
Well, Mark, like I said, we're going to have you back on the show to continue to share your wonderful journey. Where's the best place our audience can find you and your ESG Today, and where can they connect with you? What are the best places? LinkedIn, ESGtoday.com, and where else?
I mean, to get an ESG Today, just excuse me, go to ESGtoday.com.
Right.
We have a daily newsletter, or almost daily newsletter that we send out. So that's a great place to just keep in the news flow. To reach me, I do a lot of communication on LinkedIn. That's a great place to reach out.
Perfect. Well, I wish you continued success in your wonderful journey. Thank you, Mark, for making the world a better place, making a big impact. Thank you for publishing ESG Today. And again, for our listeners and viewers, www.esgtoday.com. Mark Siegel, you're a great entrepreneur. You're making an important impact, and we wish you continued success. So we hope you come back on the Impact Podcast another time to continue your shared journey.
Thanks. Would love to come back. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Engage. Engage is a digital booking platform revolutionizing the talent booking industry. With thousands of athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and business leaders, Engage is the go-to spot for booking talent, for speeches, custom experiences, live streams, and much more. For more information on Engage or to book talent today, visit letsengage.com. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy. and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com.